Hello and welcome to the regular Friday evening webcast from LaRouchePAC.com. Today is May 3rd, 2013. I'm Matthew Ogden, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our regular broadcast tonight. I'm joined in the studio by Jason Ross and Leandra Bernstein, and we have Mr. Lyndon LaRouche hooked in over video hookup from his current location in Europe. This broadcast is happening on the eve of a nationwide week of action, which has been called by LaRouche for the restoration of Glass-Steagall, which will be beginning next Monday, May 6th. Available on the website is the call to action, which has been published and has gone out widely. So this is a momentous moment for a discussion with Mr. LaRouche. He has requested that we begin with a question which has come in from institutional circles in the United States, and I would like to ask Jason Ross to come to the podium to pose the first question.
Hi there, Lynn. So here's the question for you. Next week, the House Committee on Government Reform will be holding hearings on the 9/11-12 Benghazi attacks. And for the first time, eyewitnesses from the State Department and the CIA are scheduled to testify themselves. These witnesses have hired outside attorneys because they've come under threat from the Obama administration. A news column today suggests that if these whistleblowers do indeed testify, that this will put the Obama administration in, quote, mortal jeopardy. According to one of the attorneys representing the whistleblowers, Benghazigate is much worse than Watergate. You, Mr. LaRouche, have charged that Obama has committed impeachable crimes, from his continuation of the Bush cover-up of the original 9/11 attacks, to his illegal war in Libya, to his cover-up of what actually happened in Benghazi on September 11th, 2012. Do you believe that these upcoming hearings can indeed lead to President Obama's near-term removal from office?
If we use the law and use fact and law, yes. The danger is that the opposition would be activated to do illegal actions, to suppress and deny the actions which are lawful actions and which are highly required right now.
Well, I would like to ask Jason to come back to the podium to ask a follow-up question along these lines. The situation currently inside Washington is quite tense. Not only do you have a revolt ongoing from inside President Obama's base, which has been continuing over the recent 2 weeks because of his announcement of vicious budget cuts in his 2014 budget, the chained CPI, cuts to Social Security and Medicare, and we have been getting indications from the streets around the United States that even the core of Obama's base is beginning to turn their back on him. This is obviously catalyzed by the leadership that the LaRouche PAC has posed since the beginning of Obama's first term, and most especially since the most recent presidential elections. Also, inside Washington, a total showdown is ongoing around the fight about whether or not the Obama administration should be allowed to intervene militarily in the conflict in Syria. We know that as of now, the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs of Staff continue to hold firm against this military intervention, but the clock is ticking. So I would like to ask Jason to ask a follow-up question along these lines as regards the situation around Saudi Arabia, the arming of the rebels in Syria, and so forth.
All right, well, as you know, people in the administration, some loony other government officials like John McCain, who seems to have lost his marbles, have spoken about the red line being crossed in Syria, saying that Assad's forces have used chemical weapons, that if we don't stand firm against these sort of things, further red lines will be crossed in the future, and that the time has come for military intervention in order to help the people of Syria who in their desperate plight. Now, This is opposed actively by Dempsey, by the military, by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who warn that there is no military option in Syria. There's obviously, from a legal standpoint, no military option in Syria without the support of the U.S. Congress anyway. But the situation on the ground is one where there's really nothing to do except for continue to arm rebel groups. And we've seen how well that worked in Libya. Right now in Libya, there's pressure on the General National Congress to pass the so-called political isolation law, which would take anybody who at any point in the past 30 years worked with the Gaddafi government and bar them from a government position for 10 years. Now, that would remove the president, the prime minister, 1/3 of the Congress, almost all of the judges and other judicial officers. This would basically be a coup d'etat in favor of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, which is, people we've armed, rebels, terrorists related to Al-Qaeda. 2 months ago, on March 5th, 500 or more armed demonstrators held 26 members of Congress hostage, demanding that they pass this law. There's also plans afoot to split up Iraq, to split off a Sunni section and annex it to Jordan. This is also being supported by Saudi Arabia and by Qatar. So let me come to this is funny in a not so funny way. This year, 2013, is the 150th anniversary of the U.S. Emancipation Proclamation, which the Saudis are celebrating in their own way. 2 domestic workers from the Philippines were recently rescued from a mansion owned by the Saudi armed forces, who had taken their passports, were forcing them to work without pay, subjecting them to other forms of abuse. These workers were recently rescued from a mansion in McLean, Virginia. So these workers rescued from the monarchy's armed forces. So it gives you a sense of what kind of democracy you have there. But look, what I'd like your analysis on is the situation around the push mainly from Britain and then the Obama administration to get a war going in Syria, and then the opportunity for the military and other forces to resist. What's your analysis of this situation?
Well, the first thing you have to take account of is the fact that Europe, Western and Central Europe in particular, do not have the quality of government which we have in the United States, even when we are relatively at our worst in the past. And that's the key point. First of all, in Western and Central Europe, there is no real system of government. That has broken down. You have a euro system in most of Europe. You have Spain is starving to death. Other states are in the similar kind of condition, and there is no government in Western and Central Europe which has shown itself capable of even beginning to address the problems which are about to crush Western and Central Europe in particular. Also, we have the Saudi problem, which in the Saudis and the British government, the British Empire, are both highly guilty of crimes against humanity, namely, say, 9/11, for example, which was a crime committed by the British in coordination with the Saudi kingdom. And they committed a crime against the United States, a crime of mass murder, which 2 presidencies in particular of the United States have acted to cover up and conceal, including the current president. They have all acted to cover up mass murders, crimes against humanity, for which any government is liable to be called to account for crimes against humanity. That's our problem. We in the United States are showing, again, the ultimate superiority of our system of government over those of Western and Central Europe, for example, and other places. Because we are still, despite the things that have happened, despite the fact that we have 2 presidents who weren't fit for anything, one incumbent and the other one the president, despite that, we are showing our stuff. And that's the way you have to look at this. And our job is to make sure that we do what we have to do to encourage our citizens to think clearly and to act promptly and effectively. And I see signs of the willingness and promptness of many of our citizens increasingly to do exactly that. Again, the United States, which was created actually out of a process launched by some friends in Europe, ancient Europe, or not ancient Europe, but Middle Europe, and we have shown our stuff, and I think we're going to do it again. But there are problems, there are risks, there are challenges, but compared to the complete collapse of any accountability in the actual governments, the current governments of Western and Central Europe, the American people are a hero already by comparison.